Massive update out of David Schwartz. Ripple confirms the XRP Escrow is for sale. And during today's episode, we're going to highlight the advantages of going to Ripple and borrowing directly from the escrow as opposed to buying XRP off the open market. We're also going to discuss how a gratis vendor could be applied here, allowing the US government to receive XRP as gifted software code from the company Ripple. Are we on the precipice of the US government becoming some of the biggest advocates for XRP? The evidence is now leaning in our favor. We're also going to show our listeners how XRP's ETFs are scheduled to go live sometime around October 30th. With all of this pent-up demand ready to enter the markets, we're anticipating big momentum coming into the XRP price chart, leading us to targets we have never seen before. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Good Evening Crypto, your favorite crypto news related channel. If you enjoy this content, smash that like button and subscribe, as you're going to get an update every single day, 5:30 p.m. Eastern time. And the breaking news that we're going to dive right into for today is what I called a very interesting comment out of Ripple's David Schwartz. Now, we're going to need the full context of that conversation, and that's where we're going to kick off today's episode, diving into the response that David Schwartz was reacting to on the X platform. Now, this is an update from only 48 hours ago. Vincent Van Cohn stated, XRP's total supply is really 100 billion, but of course, 35 billion is locked away. So all market cap uses 65 billion times the last traded price. Yet Bitcoin uses the total mined coins to figure out the supply, but this is wrong. You have 1 million or more Bitcoin in Satoshi's wallet. That is much like the escrow. Not to mention the millions lost or put in cold storage over time. You deduct that and you'll see a 15% less Bitcoin circulating in the market. This is the kind of stuff that goes on, and it's why market cap is a pointless lie that you were programmed to think is important by the likes of Binance. Well, the reason why Bitcoin uses total mined coins is because those coins can be liquidated at a moment's notice. So are you implying that Ripple can liquidate their entire escrow and that we should assume it's possible? David Schwartz came in with the response. Here's what David had to say. Ripple could sell the right to receive the tokens released from the escrow or even sell the accounts that the escrow deposits into. But the XRP still can't hit circulating supply until the release dates. But Johnny, there is so much to break down there. Now, first of all, what does this let us know? Ripple can legally sell the rights to the escrow without breaking any pre-allocation locks. So it doesn't affect the mechanisms of the escrow. But as for what the actual use cases could be, Ripple can sign OTC deals today for unlocks that could occur in 2026. So a company could approach Ripple and say, we'd like to purchase 10% of the escrow for the January 1st unlock. They can then agree to a price, call it $50 million for 100 million XRP tokens. Therefore, on January 1st, 2026, when those tokens are released from the escrow, the buyer would receive the direct deposit of XRP. So the advantage, the buyer pays now, they get the XRP later. There is no change to the escrow mechanisms, and there's no pre-allocation from the lock. A good example, if a hedge fund were to buy XRP, they would pay Ripple 50 million, get 100 million on January 1st after the unlock. What is the advantage? They could get a discount rate on this XRP and have that pre-allocation notion thrown completely out the window. Before we even get into the United States government connection here, guys, if you agree Ripple has pre-allocated, quote unquote, some of this XRP, smash that like button. If you disagree, leave a comment underneath the video. Johnny, what are your thoughts about what David had to say?
Well, I'll just break it down very simple for our audience so they can understand. Basically, this is a futures contract. Why would you even do this? What's the benefit? Let's think about it. Well, there's two benefits, one to the company and then one to us as the holders. So to the company, if you're Ripple, the benefit of being able to sell that escrow now is they actually get the money today. So they would get the money today. And of course, then they can go ahead. It's kind of like raising money, and they can then deploy that to, build the ecosystem. And that's exactly what we want them to do, right? As a holder, you want them taking money and deploying it back into the ecosystem and building more and more use cases for XRP. And what did Brad just say the other day? Everything we do is for the XRP ledger and XRP. So the more money they get, the more money they're going to spend on building that ecosystem. Why do you and I care, and everybody in our chat? Because that means price go up. In terms of the benefit to us, if this were to happen, is the nice thing about it is Ripple gets the money today, abs, but there's no dilution. So normally when you release the escrow, that's another billion tokens going to the market. Well, in this particular case, it doesn't, right? If the unlock is a year from now, then that dilution still doesn't happen for a year from now, but yet Ripple gets the money to start building an ecosystem. So when those coins do get diluted, well, if you've built your ecosystem up, you could absorb that dilution and maybe not see a drop in price. So there's multiple benefits here that we can see happening over time if this does happen. But I need, going back lastly to the whole what triggered this thing. The guy talking about market caps and how they're lies and this and that. Listen, here's what I'll say about market caps, just to give you guys. Just use them directionally. Because at the end of the day, we know that market caps aren't perfect. We know that, yes, some tokens may be locked up. Some tokens are lost forever. They don't represent the full true liquidity. You have to understand all that. But at least directionally, you kind of get a sense of what the size of the prize is for each one of these different tokens based on that. And that's how I use market caps apps. I don't get hung up on the exact amount into 15% higher. Of course, they're not perfect. They're not. But at least we get a gauge of how big this token is versus how big that token is. And you can compare them by looking at the market cap. So at least direction, they give you a sense of what's going on in the market.
And you know what's great about this escrow article here, Johnny, is that once again, it's signaling that what Ripple is developing, it's all about institutional adoption. It's not about people like me and you buying this asset and holding it for the long term. It's about how can we monetize the XRP token without breaking the unlocks, without breaking the protocols, and doing right by XRP investors. Now, so far, 70% of all the XRP that's released every month goes back into the escrowed account. So 1 billion is released, 700 million tokens go back into the escrow. But typically, even at today's rates, 200 to 300 million XRP tokens every month are being sold from Ripple OTC. Now, where is that XRP going? That's anybody's best guess. But my belief is when these ETFs hit the open market, we are going to see the XRP price chart radically change in price. And Dak Rector gave a great update yesterday talking about how we could be on the precipice of billions of dollars entering the crypto market in a very short period of time. During yesterday's update we provided, you guys saw it first, HBAR, Solana, and Litecoin all had spot products going live inside the United States. Well, as you can tell, the inflows and the demand, they're nowhere near XRP. XRP on the initial hybrid launch had nearly $40 million on day one. Dogecoin did 20 million. HBAR did $6.4 million yesterday, and Litecoin coming in last place Litecoin, losers. They did $1 million on day one, the smallest daily inflows we've seen for any crypto project. But what does this give us some great insight into? Well, Johnny, open interest on XRP futures right now, including Solana, over $3 billion in open interest. And we have an XRP ETF issuer in Canary Capital, the company that actually launched the first HBAR ETF yesterday. They're stating they believe $2 to $3 billion worth of inflows into XRP on day one. So massive inflows, same amount of supply. We are going to see a dramatic increase in price. And when people ask me, what are the first price targets I'm looking for, guys, 450 has my eye. I want to see some daily closures above $4.50. And then I could get excited about what the potential is from there. But let's dive into some of our newer updates. If you believe XRP reaches 450, smash that like button. If you disagree, leave a comment underneath the video. Tell me why. Getting back into the escrow, there is a situation here where the United States government ends up owning XRP. And I'm reminded of a video that was put out earlier this year by Howard Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary inside the United States, where he talked about how the US government could leverage a gratis vendor. Now, what is a gratis vendor? This is an approved vendor for the United States government that can gift product to the government, but it must not sell it. Could Ripple end up gifting XRP to the US government as software code to modernize settlement systems? That has to be discussed now that we know that about the escrow, Johnny. It would only take one pre-allocation to the United States government to completely change the game of how XRP is perceived here inside the United States. But let's break it down.
I tell them what a gratis vendor is.
Yeah.
Because I was not going to go into the government. I was doing transition.
What is a gratis vendor?
A gratis vendor is an approved vendor for the United States of America that gives product to the government, doesn't sell it.
Okay.
So therefore, I don't have to go through the whole process of becoming a proper vendor because you're giving it to us. And then if you give it to Article 2, which is the president's stuff, then the president can accept it, right? Because it's give.
Sorry, Howard, what's an example of this? Like just to make
I write some software.
You write some software.
I write some software for the Commerce Department to do a better job of XYZ. You just give it to me. and then I do QA on it, and I can take it. If you sell it to me for $1, we go into government hell.
Right. The whole rigmarole.
Right? But if you
So, Johnny, it's actually beneficial for both Ripple and the United States government. There's mutual incentive here to increase the ownership of XRP because, for the record, the United States government owns $7.8 million of XRP. Now, that's peanuts. It's just from acquiring that from criminals and nefarious accounts. But once we see the United States government begin using XRP as an underlying software to improve modern settlement systems, or even just as a treasury asset, because I think the initial conversation for XRP investors should be, will XRP be included in the crypto reserve? Donald Trump has said they are in the process of developing a Bitcoin reserve. If other assets like XRP, Solana, and Cardano are included, that is going to give those projects a strategic advantage over everything else in the space today. But Johnny, what do you think the possibilities are of Ripple just allocating 10 to 20% of one of these escrow deposits to the United States government as a gift, leveraging the gratis vendor clause?
I'll tell you what, it would be a hell of a smart move. If you wanted to be able to, let's say, give the government an incentive to kind of start working with your technology, what better way to do it than, you heard what he said, it'd be a government nightmare. You know, where you got to go through all the red, even if you sell it for $1, right? The red tape you have to go through. But if you donate it, it's a whole nother story. If I was Brad, I would have my team right now. I'd be like, all right, guys, figure out, you know, how do we get something to them? Donate. What do we need to do to make this happen? To me, it's the perfect way to be able to give them a reason to take you on. Because I mean, listen, it's not just them, right? Cardano's knocking on their door. Solana's knocking on their door. Everybody's knocking on their door wanting to get in. So you've got to be smart about this. And I think Howard's just literally given the blueprint of this is how you do it. The question is, are they paying attention? I don't know, Abs. That's going to be a very, very interesting thing. But if it were me, I certainly would be figuring out how do you get this in the hands of the government.
And considering we're going through a debt crisis right now, guys, it's more likely than ever that the United States government would leverage an American-made digital asset in XRP as a solution to the liquidity crisis we all know is coming. Here's Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent discussing exactly that.
Yeah, I think we're also at a unique moment geopolitically. And I could see in the next few years that we are going to have some kind of a grand global economic reordering. Is something on the equivalent of a new Bretton Woods, or if you want to go back, like something back to the steel agreements or the Treaty of Versailles. There's a very good chance that we are going to have to have that over the next 4 years, and I'd like to be a part of it. I've studied this. I think it's kind of a unique skill set.
And this is why my prediction is, guys, by the end of the Trump administration, not only is the crypto market going to be radically different because of value and new use cases and new demand, I think that projects like XRP, which are currently a $2 asset, could be trading at triple digits by the end of 2028. If you agree, smash that like button, leave a comment underneath the video, guys. As we look at the XRP price chart, we showed the positive catalyst. We're waiting on the bullish momentum here. And Cointelegraph put out an update today. XRP's chart is flashing bullish signals with analysts eyeing a rally potentially towards $3. What we need, guys, we need to get daily closures above 285, and then we can expect some very bullish momentum in the XRP community. If you enjoyed this content, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you all in the next one.